Hi, everybody. This is John Ferrian with Live Large Universe, and I have Amber here with me tonight. I'm so excited, Amber, to have you on the show with me tonight. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to get talking.
This is cool because just literally minutes ago, you shared with me kind of how we originally got introduced. Because like you and I had a different kind of a memory of like how we first got
Hmm.
introduced, and your story is far more interesting than my story. So why don't you kick us
Right.
off with kind of like how you and I got introduced first? We'll just go high level with that too, and then we'll go into a little deeper stuff too, and then we'll talk about the Sharon win and everything too. But like, how
Yeah.
did you hear about me, and how did we get introduced first? Go ahead and share that.
Right. I do love this story because it's kind of like something bad happened and like something even better came from that. So I was uninvited on a trip to Sycamoose last season, like last minute. And so I
Okay.
was already loaded, ready to hit the road. So I ended up going to Velmount, which is where I basically grew up riding. I'm very comfortable there. And I showed up into town not having anyone to ride with, and
Yeah,
just at the hotel, actually in the hot tub, I ran into a couple of guys where usually I say, I can guide you to some secret stashes if I can have someone to ride with, right? And so I met up with a couple guys, rode with them a couple days, and then that happens to be our mutual friend, Travis.
yeah.
And instantly he got to know me and he was like, wow, I have a friend that interviews people and you're so interesting and we should definitely get you connected. And
That's awesome.
that's how we've met.
And I remember actually after you shared that, I was like, oh, I do remember that like Facebook post or the Facebook Messenger post that went back and forth, and we kind of get introduced, and I'm sure we both got
Hmm.
busy with our lives and moved on. And then
Yeah.
here, I don't know, a few months ago, I had made a post on my personal Facebook page asking for future guests for this season as we're doing, and that was when you
Hmm.
reconnected with me, and we got connected here too. So really cool story about
Hmm.
how we got connected, and I'm sure Travis is going to be here watching. So everybody who's here watching tonight right now, make sure you go into the comments and let us know where you're watching from. I see two people so far. We got more people here. It says we got 7 or more watching live, but we got 2 people who've commented already. One is our friend Sodi. He's from Northern California. Thank you guys for tuning in. Brandon Gray, actually, he's a previous guest on the show as well, and he says hi, Amber and John, watching from Squamish, British Columbia. So another fellow Canadian up there watching. And then we have our buddy Dave from Snowmobile, Wisconsin. So Dave, say hi. Appreciate you saying that too. Anybody else here, and everybody who's sharing, make sure you get in here and share. And if you share the show out tonight, you're going to be entered to win our first backcountry first aid kit from Mountain Lab. So I do need to get out here and put this up and actually give it away soon. Every night when I get up ready to do another episode, I look at this and go like, man, I need to give this away so that we can get on to another prize too. But this is still the prize that's up for grabs now. I'll try to within the week here be able to do. We're actually going to give this away with some of our past episodes from this season so far. So again, if you're here watching the show, go in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. We just love to see the names and everybody pop up. I see Eric Nelson is here from Oak Harbor, Washington. James Kaufman is here from McCall, Idaho. So again, continue to share the show out. Put it on your personal page. I think it's surprising how many times that just a simple share to your personal page will introduce somebody new to the show that maybe has never seen it before. And I can very much guarantee you guys that you're going to be excited about the stories that Amber has to share tonight. It's a pretty impactful story and some twists. And I'm actually going to tee it up right now, quick, and I'll talk about a few things we're going to talk about. Is Amber's had a few different incidents slash accidents over her riding career. She also has the perspective of being a female backcountry rider. I would put you in the category of extreme power sports athlete too, based on the description of what we're doing and what you're planning on doing. And then
Yeah.
really interesting twist here too is that your profession, right? We're going to talk about that here in a minute too. So people should be paying attention to what her day job is and what her profession is, because it's a very unique situation as well. So all together, we got some pretty amazing stories we're going to share tonight. So let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Who else we got? We got Kevin Hedstrom here from Dillon, Montana. Alberta Mud Riders. That must be one of the clubs up there.
Hi, Melissa.
Alyssa from Alberta, Canada. Somebody you guys know. So, well, very cool.
Yeah.
So, Amber, go ahead and just give us a little bit of background about yourself. I mean, it's one of the things that is really cool about this format is we're not in a big rush, right? And so we can just sit here and just share a
Hmm.
little bit about ourselves and let people get to know a little bit about you if they're not already following you on social media. So,
Great.
floor is yours. Just let us know a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Amber Heberling. I'm 31 and I'm from Alberta, Canada. I've been riding, motorsports have been in my life since I was born. So there's never not been a day where that it's not been a part of my life. It's
Yeah,
just it's my lifestyle, right? It's not my hobby, it's my lifestyle. That's what I
that's awesome.
say. Yeah, and I'm a power sports mechanic. So I just started small engines, so I still would do a lot of lawnmowers, weed eaters, and stuff like that. But my wrenching really started from obviously fixing your own stuff that breaks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to do a couple more shout outs here and then we're going to come back to some more stories. But so what else do we have here? We have Megan Ashley Gordon. Proud of you, Amber. Stoked to watch you from Hinton, Alberta. We've got Billy Siebert here from Pocatello, Idaho. He's a previous guest on the show. We've got Bob here from Port Angeles, Washington, local guy up here in Washington State. We've got Debbie here from, it doesn't say where from, but Debbie Lipka. So proud of you, Amber. Appreciate you being on. And then we have Travis is watching, so confirmed. So Travis, thank you for making the introduction between myself and Amber, and we've got some great stories here to share tonight. And so Matt Thomas, who I actually was out riding with today, is here from Thorpe, Washington. We actually were out riding today too, and got to play in some heavy, wet Cascade concrete. So
Ooh.
very good, very good. So Amber, give me a little background on like what originally got you into snowmobiling, backcountry snowmobiling, or power sports in general. Like, was it something you grew up with, or kind of how did you get started? Was it one of those bad influential parents that you had? That's the way many of us start. Is like our dads or our moms are like super like into the stuff, and they
Yeah.
they basically come on, you got to go with us. Is that what happened to you?
100%. No, my whole family rode. So even because, so when I started riding as soon as I could hold a helmet on my head, like I have very vivid memories of every weekend we went out riding and I'd fall asleep like with my head on the throttle or something like
Yeah,
that. And like makes me sleepy sometimes because it brings me back to nap time. But yeah, that was what my whole family, my mom did, my sister did, my grandpas did, my uncles did,
yeah,
everyone. My dad's the diehard backcountry rider.
gotcha.
And yeah, so we grew up in Alberta, which is a lot of trail riding and stuff like that. And then my dad was an avid mountain rider, but not until I was 15 did he take us up. And then we all started riding in the backcountry together. And yeah, it's been a love hate relationship because obviously we've talked about this. When I was younger, I whiskey throttled a lot. So I had a couple crashes that scared me as a kid. I actually remember the first time, I think it was the first time I was riding a sled myself, not
Yeah,
doubling through the trail. I was going to make a whole day by
yep,
myself, and I jump off this little ditch and I get air and I crash, and my dad comes to me and he's like, that was so cool, dude. And I like burst into tears and I'm like, can't do this. I got so scared.
yeah, yeah,
And it was intimidating, especially being young and out in like a wide prairie setting.
yeah,
If I would get stuck or something, like I'd be walking for like
yeah,
miles to go get help.
yeah.
So that's yeah, there was no babysitter. It was you're coming riding.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and
there
I
was
can
no choice.
imagine growing up in Alberta was probably very much like my growing up in Minnesota, where like you lived in winter. Like it just, like where I live
Mm,
now near Seattle, I get to have green grass in all winter long and no snow at my
right.
house for the most part, but I can drive an hour away and get up in elevation and go find snow. But in Alberta, in Minnesota, like you pretty much just live in the winter and you get to shovel it, you get to play it. And so you're right, it's just part of a lifestyle. And
Yeah.
I think our parents started out, both of us, we had this situation where our parents were snowmobilers and we were
Hmm.
exposed to it at a young age. I know I remember just similar to you too, like sitting on my mom's lap as we were riding through the neighborhoods and around the yard and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
yeah, you just kind of get sucked into it, and here we are. And somehow you've made a career out of it too at the same time, which is really cool. We're going to come back to that. But
Hmm.
one of the highlights that we want to talk about tonight, because for those who haven't ever seen my show before, the show is called Live Large Universe, and what I tell everybody Live Large stands for is live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others, right? And it's kind of
Hmm.
those are the kind of the pillars of kind of the focus that we have, but it's really a lot of it's around backcountry safety, right? And we do a lot of discussions around avalanche safety, but we've talked about other things like, like tonight you're going to have a couple of accidents or incidents that you've experienced that you've learned from and you
Hmm.
now are going to be a better rider, a safer rider because of what you've experienced before, and then also
Hmm.
talking through the things that you have to overcome to continue to move forward. And for you in some of the cases, like overcoming the fears that you have in your own, you're trusting yourself and riding and stuff like that too. So,
Mhm.
and I think that's all very pertinent to a lot of us and what our experiences are in the backcountry. And that's what the show's all about. And so we're here to just kind of share some stories. And so you had a
Mhm.
couple of pretty big incidences over the last year, one
Mhm.
snowmobiling and one ATVing. So let's go
Mhm.
back to last season and give us some pretty big, deep details about, lead us up to the day that it happened. Like, were you on a trip out in the backcountry? Were
Right.
you with friends? Like, set up the story of like where you were and why you were there. Let's start there, and then we'll work into what happened with the accident.
Okay. So yeah, last year I did the Riley Souhan backcountry race in Golden, BC.
Okay,
It's one of its kind. And I came down early, which was probably a mistake because I was like, if I'm going down, I want to ride as many days as possible. But I probably
nice.
should have like taken it easy up to that race. But I was riding every day up until that race. And yeah, the day before I aired out a reentry and I read my wall wrong. And so I thought it was flat. It was a socked in day. I thought it was flat, but it was turned. So when I went to do my reentry and it came up, it ended up just airing out and crushing me.
So you
So
ended
at
up
the
under the
time,
under the sled then as it came back down on top of you.
the weight of it. So like my body took some damage, but the biggest thing was my head that I hit really bad. I've never had a concussion to that level before
Yeah.
where like I had to sit in darkness for about a month
Wow.
because I was spinning and I've had since fourth been like working with a concussion specialist, but
Hmm.
that's a tough one to come back from. Like I kind of mentioned to you after that accident, I remember right when I was in the hospital, the doctors were like, "You shouldn't put a helmet back on," and I was like, this is my way of life. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I could give it up. I can learn to play in safer ways, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna ride until I die. So it's not stopping.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's one of those things when you're right. It's like this love-hate relationship where it's like it's so much passion, but at the same time, there's like a high level of risk that comes with any of these backcountry sports. And I think the focus of our show and like helping people learn from stories of others. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of us have these stories, but in some cases we're maybe either too embarrassed or we don't want to talk about it or it's something we want to bury. And I think my experience has been that when people share stories like this, it's really educational for a lot of folks, and we all can learn from it. And maybe somebody makes a different decision that they maybe would have had they not heard the story. And so I think those kind
Mhm.
of things are always super important. But with the accident too, like the reentry, was it the snowmobile that came back and hit you in the head then, or did you hit your head on like a rock
Yeah.
behind you or something like that, or what was it?
No, this weight of that engine really crushed my body because I was
Yeah,
pinned and someone had to come get me. So and like
yeah,
throw the sled off me. Um, yeah, but going through these accidents, like you said, when we're talking to people, sharing your stories, that's probably been the most helpful thing for me throughout my accidents is talking to other people that have had similar things and how they
yeah,
come back. Like that's something that I'm constantly reaching out to other pro athletes to be like, you get injured all the time. It's not about an if, it's when,
yeah,
right? You're taking on high risk and
yep,
accidents are gonna happen. And how do you come back from that? And how do you mentally plan for that? And how can you be safer? And how can you not have these things happen again? Accidents are going to happen, and that's part of the
yeah,
sport. It's the risk that we take on, and we love the
yeah,
adrenaline. And for the most part, hopefully, you're throwing down a trick in some deep snow. But
yeah,
last year,
yeah.
the snow was there was no snow; it was ice. So I think coming back, that was just landing on hard impact.
Yeah, no, and I think it was probably what 2 or 3 seasons ago. I had a pretty similar, it was a reentry again too, where like it was we were in where were we? We were outside of Jackson Hill climbs. We were there for the week of the Jackson Hill climbs, and we were up at the what is it, Togety Pass? I think yeah, Togety Pass is we were up there riding, and the snow was kind of like tracked out pretty good, and so we were really hunting to try to find some fresh tracks. And of course, the closer you get to the edge of the trees or the rocks or whatever, you're right there at the edge. there's
Hmm.
more. So I found some snow that I could get in there and kind of do some reentries on. It wasn't anything too crazy, but I had one of them where as I was doing the reentry, there was like a little baby tree under the snow that was hollow, right? And so it threw off my line
Right.
from what I expected. And when I
Yeah.
did it, it came back and I fell straight back, and the sled was like totally straight up vertical. These things are like 11 feet tall, right? You know,
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
meters to you Canadians.
Yeah. What? How
What's
tall?
feet? It's about 2 meters, you know. More, 2 to 3 meters. So
Yeah.
the sled was up in the air and it came back, and as it came back, it was at a little bit of a twist, and the end of the handlebars, so the left handlebar,
Mm,
the end of the handlebar with the arch on it on a skidoo came back full force, like from a tree falling, like hit me right. I was wearing like a protected vest, but it hit
mhm,
me just outside of there, like just in the side of my chest here, just outside of where my protection was, and I just
mhm.
took, it was just like a drill right like into my chest, and I'm almost positive I cracked ribs. I had a giant bruise, and like it was like hurt to breathe for about 3 or 4 weeks. So based on life experiences, I would say it was probably some cracked ribs, and thank God it wasn't a
Yeah.
concussion or anything like that. But
Mhm.
you're right. It's like when you were doing some of these like challenging moves, or tricks, or however you want to call them, there comes a lot of risk with it. It's a lot of fun. It's cool to be able to do it, but you have to progress with it, and you have to take it easy. And as you do that,
Mhm.
you're gonna find your limits, right? And so
Yes.
you know,
Well, and I always kind of say if you're not pushing your limit, then
yeah,
like you kind of have to find that fault line within yourself, and
yeah,
because that's how you get better is by slowly
exactly,
pushing. But yeah, I've like I said, I've had some interesting conversations with people over this past season as I'm coming back from my injuries and stuff. And Cody McNulty said something to me that really stuck, and he said it's longevity over progression. So, like, do you want to ride the rest of your life, and or do you want to take those big
yeah,
risks now? And but he really stated that like you have to trust your gut. So like there's days where everyone's hitting something
yep,
and they're giving you even a hard time for not going to hit it, but if something's off inside of you,
yeah,
you need to trust that and
amen,
take that risk
yeah.
appropriately, because that's usually it. When I always say with my accident, that reentry accident, I kept saying one more time, I can do this one
That's
more
where we all
time.
that's where we
And
all
then
get in
that
trouble. That's literally where we all
yeah.
get in trouble, is like at that one more. Oh, I got just one more. And it's, you get to learn yourself and your
Mhm.
own personality too, like, and I get to the point where like I hit this, like, okay, you're at your peak of the day and you're doing really well, and then the day's kind of winding down, and all of a sudden you hit a vibe, and you're like, go go go, and like you just keep jumping a little
Mhm.
further, a little harder, a little harder, and you're just like, okay, I'm at the end of the day, I'm getting tired, I probably should slow
Yeah.
down, but you're in the groove, you're in the in the drive, I
Yeah.
guess, and that'll sneak up on you. And so when you reflect back on that day with the reentry, what are the things that you think about? And if you were to look back at that day again, what would you have done differently?
I probably would have stopped after the first 10, 20 times I wasn't getting it. The
Yeah,
snow was not great, but I was just so stubborn in my mind, being
yeah,
like, I can do this. Why am I not getting it? Instead of just maybe accepting that, like, maybe that day wasn't the day.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's, again, when I look back at that day, what could I have done differently is taking a second to actually read my landscape, right? Like if I would have stopped and been like, oh, it's actually that wall is kind of angled, but I was just go, go, go. I was not really thinking because, like you said, you get in this adrenaline rush when you're
yeah,
riding and you're just like holding the like throttle wide open, right? And you're
yeah,
just like so stoked on life that, and especially when you ride with other people, right? Everyone's always chasing those fresh corners of snow. And so you're like, if I don't hit it right now, then someone else is going to hit it. And then that spot is taken. And so I think looking back, it's like, I need to remember to take a step back and actually think about what's going on. Like, being able to like imagine what you're doing and play it through your head is something that I do a lot.
yeah,
So like to walk through exactly what's going through, how it's going to happen perfectly. And I always say, like, if you have doubt, you shouldn't be doing it,
yeah,
right? Like, you have to be like, no, if I'm going to hit it, I'm going to nail it. And that's the way that my mind works when I go in. Because, yeah, the second there you have hesitation is usually when.
Yeah,
bad
absolutely.
things happen.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it like if you're hitting a jump or something like that too, or you're hitting a reentry. Like if you're not full committed to going for it, like for people who've never done a reentry, like it's all about the look, right? Like you look over your shoulder and you
Hmm.
spot your landing, and if you're not focused on that and you're not like giving it your all to go for it, like it's never going to rotate around, and that's where people get in trouble, and the sled will come back over on
Hmm.
top of them, and I mean, sadly, even was it Ken Block passed away here just a couple of seasons ago with, I don't know if you'd officially call it a reentry, but he was, the sled came over backwards on top of him, which is very similar to what happened to you. And
Hmm.
as we've seen, it can be life threatening. And so we're glad you're
Yeah.
okay. We're thankful that,
Yeah.
you made it through with minimal damage, even though it was a pretty severe concussion.
Right.
And I think you already said this, but the doctors pretty much told you you shouldn't be doing this anymore, right? And
Yeah.
how do you handle that? Because you came out of snowmobile season with a concussion, and apparently
Hmm.
you hadn't learned your lesson yet because you got on an ATV through the summer too, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I was definitely not allowed to ride this summer. Because after the accident happened, they're like, don't put a helmet on for 6 months. And I was like, in 6 months, it's sledding season again.
Yeah,
And riding for me is my sanity. Like I do it truly for me.
yeah,
And when you're riding, like you don't have a choice but to be present, and you're in nature in some of the most beautiful places in the world. And
100%.
so
Yeah,
I need that. I need to be out riding. And so for me, it was kind of like I started slow. I was like, I can just ride mild. I don't have to ride extreme, because you don't
yeah,
have to take on these risks. You can ride at
exactly.
any level and have a
Yeah,
great time. Like you get to choose how much risk you're taking on. And so
amen. Yep.
when I started, I was very much like, I'm just taking it easy. I wasn't pushing. I wasn't, I was just riding for myself, right? My own sanity. And then,
Yeah,
it feels good, right? You're riding and you get into a zone. And for
yeah,
me, I really live for the adrenaline rush. I love pushing those limits. And so, I go a little faster and
yeah.
I jump a little bigger, and right. Yeah, so it was late in the season, probably August already, and I last minute was like, I'm going out riding with my one buddy. There's some trails near my place that so it's really easy access to get to, and I felt really in the zone that day. Like when I talk about this next accident, I was like, I was dialed. Like I've never ridden that fast in my life. Like
Wow.
third gear, tapped, winding through trails, like, and it was, we got through most of that day, and I was like, oh, I needed this. I just remember
Yeah,
saying, man, did I ever need this ride? It felt so good. And this accident was a fluke. Like I was in control, even as I'm saying I'm at these high speeds and pushing, like I'm very much was in control up into it all. My buddy was filming with a drone, and it was kind of dodging in front of me, and then I was really close because I was trying to get the shot, and so he tapped on his brakes, and then when I tapped on my brakes, I was like almost hit him, but I diverged and was in a power slide coming around the corner, which again, totally in control of. But then there was a log with a stick hanging the wrong way up, and so when I came in and hit, it kind of flipped me over and crushed me. And I say, like, in the air, I knew that I had broken something, because I
wow.
like felt the pop in my motocross
Oof.
boot. So like I thought that I had broken through skin, and like then I was pinned. And so something that you would know through sledding and stuff is, if you're ever in an avalanche or
Yeah,
in these situations, the very first thing you need to do is calm yourself, because the
yeah,
more worked up you're going to get, like it's going to become a worse situation. So I'm pinned. I know that I'm broken, and I can still hear my buddy riding. So like my carb flooded, my quad turned off, and it was like at first you're like breathing really hard trying to move, and then you just have to be like, okay,
you got to
someone's
trust
coming.
that someone's coming. Yeah,
And then, he eventually turned back. He eventually saw that I wasn't there. He pulled my quad off me, and like instantly I looked down, and my motocross boot was 90 degrees off from my knee. And so I remember
in
he was
case
like, "You're
anybody wants
fine."
to know, like that's not supposed to happen.
No, no. And he was like, "No, you're just holding your leg." Like he was like, "You're fine." He was trying really hard to de-escalate, but I was
Yeah,
like, "This is not normal." I'm like, "Get a chopper in here." Like I'm not riding out. But then yeah, 911, they're like, "We can't get to you." And that's a big risk that you take on when you're in the
yeah,
backcountry, is
yeah,
that are you prepared? Like, I'm always riding with a first aid kit,
Yeah.
right? I want to know that I can manage, somewhat manage if these incidents happen, because they do, not just
Yeah.
for me, but for other people that you're around. And yeah, so then my buddy was on a bike, so he had to lift me onto my quad and then drive me out too. So like that's a big deal when you know you're in, like, hurting, but there's no other way. Like, the only way to get help is you have to get out of the bush. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was a while to get out to the road and get to an ambulance and go to the hospital. And I was actually just telling this story because they cut through my gear and stuff, and I was like, "You're not cutting my boots." And so I'm in the ambulance and I'm like showing them how to take my boot off on my
Uh,
good leg.
yeah,
And
motocross.
then
A motocross boot to like try to take off is almost impossible without like making it worse, right? It's like,
yeah, I blacked out. I don't remember. They took
yeah.
it off and I still have the boot,
Oh
but I
wow.
didn't wake up till I was back in the hospital. So,
Yeah.
but I saved the boot, so it's
Yeah.
worth it.
Was it a compound fracture? Did it come through the skin, or was it
So I fractured and broke my tibia, fibula,
yeah.
and then like crushed one of my bones and tore all my ligaments. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I was within 24 hours. I was really lucky that within 24 hours, I had two surgeries and I was out and on the road
Wow.
to recovery. But
Okay.
I still spent about a week in the hospital. And it was about 8 weeks before I stood for the first time. And then about 12 weeks before I started to walk again.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I still have a little bit of a limp. It's just because everything's so tight. So like, I have a leg that's a little shorter now. I have a bunch of pins and plates and screws and stuff in my leg, but we're coming back. Physically, I'm coming back. It's hard to retrust your body
Yeah.
when, in
I'd
my
love.
mind, it
Yeah.
still feels that it's pointing the other way.
Yeah, I'd love to talk that a little bit too, because like in theory, sled season has probably started for you up there, right? Like, I mean, it's been a late start down here in Washington State. I think a lot of people are just getting out in the last week or two, but up north, if you've been able to ride, like, there's been snow in at least in
It's
the.
so good.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
so
It's
good.
like you guys are having a great season up. If is it British Columbia is where you mostly go riding then, or no?
I'm actually in Sycamoose, British
Right now,
Columbia right now.
yeah.
And
And so
so,
you've been
yeah,
out
I ride
riding,
exclusively basically in BC. That's where I
yeah.
do my mountain riding.
And so, something I want to tackle a little bit here too, and I think it's a really important topic because I don't think enough people acknowledge it, is the idea that trusting yourself again, right? Like, and I think it's something that I've seen happen over and over again where someone is progressing, they're building confidence, and then they have an accident, right? And in some
Hmm.
cases, we as human beings don't always respond the way we think we're going to respond in that moment of thing. And I've tell people that, people respond through fight, flight, you know, or freeze, fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like some people, when they get into an accident like that, they're fighting, they're sprawling, whatever. Other people, they get into something like that too, and there's this flight syndrome that happens, and they're trying to bail or whatever it is. And then there's a lot of
Hmm.
people who they get into this like emergency situation, they simply just freeze, right? And so everybody responds differently,
Hmm.
and sometimes those responses are unexpected, right? And I think for you, you've had your own version of this, but as you've had to, retrust yourself and to progress back and forward, even as recent as this week, riding again, like,
Hmm.
tell me about what you're experiencing and how you're dealing with it. And, and again, I think being as vulnerable as possible to kind of let other people understand that, like, this is a normal experience, right? Like, it's something that
Right.
everybody's going to go through some level of this. Some people are, more
Hmm.
or less. But like, what are you struggling with? What are you fighting through to be able to get back and ride with confidence again?
Right. And I actually think that this pertains to how my sledding and motorsports started when I was young. Because, like I said, I kind of touched on, whiskey throttling and crashes and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like, a lot of my accidents growing up were happening when I was being doubled or I wasn't in control. And so taking control gave me the confidence to slowly build myself up. So I feel like right now with what I'm going through, I'm almost having to tell myself everything that I had to tell myself 20 years ago,
Yeah.
you know? And yeah, it's how do I say this? Coming back, it's not easy. Being injured and like that fear lives in me and is so prevalent right
Yeah.
now because my body's not 100%. And can I trust my body? And I'm not, and I'm hesitant. And, especially when you're riding this 4 feet of fresh snow we have
Yeah.
here in Sycamoose,
Yep.
right? Um, Sorry, I think that air compressor might be going on.
We
I'm
can
at the
hear we can hear
shop,
it
so.
we can hear it a little bit, but it's not too bad. So go ahead,
Oh,
keep
okay,
going. Sorry.
great. It's so loud here. um, yeah, no, I'm kind of having to walk myself back through what I did when I was younger, which is you're in control and you get to move at your own pace. So
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I've been doing now is removing the expectation, which is hard because especially as I'm a more advanced rider, I'm almost expected to be a certain level,
Yep.
and having to take a step back and say, I'm not there right now, and finding the right people to ride with it, kind of understand that
Yeah.
you know I'm moving a little slower, I'm getting back to it, but I kind of have to build myself back up. And I guess that's what I was referencing when I was talking about when I was younger, is that me being able to take control and be in control of the throttle and brake and say, this is as fast as I want to go or as
Yep.
slow as I want to go, or like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to go climb a big chute or do something like that. Being in control allows me to put some of that fear aside.
Yeah. Well, I think
So,
something you referenced that I want to go a little deeper into also is the support system, right? Of like finding the right riding partners that are going to support you, right? Because there may be, I mean, like literally this can happen where you have a core riding group that you're with, everybody's progressing and learning together. They're, now all advanced riders, they want to go shred hard. And all of a sudden
mm-hmm,
now, quote unquote, Amber's slowing the group down, right? I'm sure there's some
mm-hmm,
level of guilt that comes with that. There's a level of, hoping that the other part of the team responds in a way that is supportive and encouraging you to come back through. But there's this yin and yang balance that comes with that I'm sure you've experienced. If you want to elaborate on that a little bit. So, and then
100%. And I say that now when I talk. So right now I ride a 2024 Skidoo Freeride 146,
yeah,
which you can't be a bad rider on a 146. That's like an all or nothing riding style, which I live for. I
momentum.
love.
Got to keep that
Yeah,
momentum, right?
I say that I ride with like 165 turbos, and they just like putz around, like look around at the view. And I'm like, I got to start from way back here,
Yeah,
full to the bar. And if I make one mistake, I'm done.
you're done. Yep, you're stuck.
So all of that is so great. I love that style of riding until now I'm injured. So I'm a little bit slower in how I'm stepping over my sled.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, that weight is 100% on me. I feel like I'm having to explain to people that like I'm not riding very good, or like I'm struggling on my
yeah,
146, and that it does weigh on me. But I had a bunch of anxiety going into this season, and then I
yeah,
realized that just being vulnerable, people are way more receptive to that.
yeah,
Because actually my last trip I was riding Blue River, BC, the previous weekend, and yeah, my anxiety stopped me from going to ride. And
yeah,
I've never had that as an adult. I love to ride, I live to ride.
yeah,
Riding is my sanity. And so to say that my own anxiety was like, because we have so much snow, and that's an amazing thing, and here I am being like, it's way harder to ride a 146 in a
yeah,
lot of snow, and I'm physically not there. And
yep,
I didn't go riding one day, and then
yep,
I had to reach out to the group that I was riding with, and just being honest and saying, I'm having a lot of anxiety. And I was really lucky that they were very reassuring and
yeah,
was like, there's no expectation, we're all just here to be out and ride, just because I can ride with some people that are like, we need to full send all day. And if
yeah,
we're not full sending, it's not a good day.
yeah, yeah,
Right. And then,
yeah, yeah,
but like for me, like just being on a machine in any kind of realm is
yeah,
my happy place. Like as
yep,
much as I love full sending, I'm
yeah,
very content just sitting on my sled in the mountains.
yep, yeah.
So,
And I think a
yeah,
lot of it, it's just being
no,
honest with each other with your riding group, right? I think is a big part of it. And even in our ride today, we had a situation where a couple of newer riders came out with us today for the first time. I'd never ridden with them before. Wanted to give them opportunity to do so, so we did. And so the first half of the day, we kept it pretty tame, right? Like we did a lot of trail
mm-hmm,
riding, we hit a couple of meadows, and I could see that already. At least one of the two were struggling already. And I knew as the day was progressing, we were going to get into areas that I just knew wasn't going to be, it was our goal for the day to get into a specific area that we want to get into because
right,
we knew it hadn't been untracked yet. And like, that was the whole point of us going out, is like, we knew we were going to get into the zone. And these particular riders, I was like, so we stopped midday kind of at a point where it was easy for them to break off. And I just told them, I go, based on how it's gone so far, I don't believe you're going to be able to make it in there. So here's your options. You can either
Hmm.
ride with us the rest of the trail up there, and at that point, you can turn around and come back on your own if you know the route back. If you're also, because they were struggling with, like, it's so wet down here right now. Like, it's almost raining in the down lower elevations, and you get up there and the snow's
Hmm.
super sticky. So everybody was fighting goggles, and one of the riders was basically like, "Yeah, I think I'm cool. Let's just head back to the truck, right?" And so then the two of them paired up. They headed back down to the truck together, and but I got a text message at the end of the day that they had an amazing day. They were so grateful for the time that we spent with them, and I think so many times people are afraid to be honest with their riding partners, right? And just let them know that, hey, this is a zone that probably you shouldn't be in, or that you should be in, or in your case, when you're the one saying, like, yeah, I'm not ready for this right now, like, can we either
Hmm.
change the plan altogether, or can I get somebody to go back with me early, or something like that, right? Like, depending on what you're
Hmm.
up for. So
Yeah, and I can even say that, like, because people always sometimes ignore that, like when you know your body's starting to get tired,
yeah,
right? And they're like, well, some guys want to keep riding, but it's like when you're tired and you're pushing
you're gonna
yourself is
make
when
mistakes.
accidents happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, mistakes happen. And so
yep.
having the confidence to say, I've hit my limit, I'm done for the day. You always hear, this is what I always hear: I have no more stucks today. No more stucks. I
Ah,
can't handle any more stucks for the day.
nice.
That's what's said.
Nice, nice. Well, let's shift gears a little bit too. I mean, is there anything else you want to share about the accident or what you've experienced so far? Otherwise, we're going to shift gears a little bit and maybe talk about what you do for your day job, and we'll dive into that a little bit. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. That sounds great.
awesome, awesome. And so this was something that I learned about you as we were doing kind of our pre-show interview here about a week or so ago. Is that you're a professional power sports mechanic, right? Small engine mechanic and all that. And
Mhm.
being a female in that industry is, as we all know, very unique. And
Mhm.
you've had a number of experiences that you and I kind of chuckled about a little bit too. But
Yeah.
just tell me about it. Like, how did you? Let's start with, like, how did you get into wanting to be a power sports mechanic? Right. Let's just start there.
Right. Well, if you know me and then you know my father he was the diehard
Yeah.
backcountry sledder. He's
Yeah.
the master mechanic to this day. Everyone trusts what he says. He can fix anything.
Yep.
And so actually growing up, like I didn't need to know anything about my machines because my dad would
Your
just
dad
be
was
ready,
reaching
be
on it. Yep.
running. Yeah,
Yep.
it was ready every single time I wanted to ride. And so it wasn't until I was probably in my adult years and actually venturing out on my own was I like, I should probably have a basic understanding of some of these things. And yeah, it's funny because that's like I said, that's what my dad does. And I went to university for something totally different.
Oh
I
yeah.
was kind of like, no, that's not what I want to do. And
Well, it's like most
I
kids, they want to do something different than their parents. Like, I think that's just the nature of how humans work. So,
100%. Yeah, I was avoiding it in so many ways, and it was
uh,
interesting because when I finally started working and getting my hands dirty and having like wrenching on stuff was when I like, wow, this
it was
like it
fun.
felt right.
Yeah.
It felt right, and it felt like I feel like why I regretted all that time learning to wrench for my dad as a kid because like I just had no interest and yeah, so then I just wanted to be able to fix my own stuff, honestly. I didn't think it would be a profession. I was kind of just like,
Yeah.
this is an expensive sport and
Yeah.
if you don't know how to do a lot of these basic things yourself, like it is pricey.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that was the biggest thing that I just wanted to be able to work on my own stuff, fix my stuff. I was breaking stuff and then yeah, I started by just doing like some evening small engine classes and then I was doing a lot of small engine stuff, but then, I want to work on the stuff that I ride.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was working at a motorcycle shop. So I was actually doing a lot of motorcycle stuff, which is
Okay.
cool, but more ATVs and stuff like that. And yeah, no, I love wrenching. I think it's like
So how did you get your first job as a professional mechanic, right? Like, did you walk into the shop? Did you apply? Did somebody know you and like invite you to come
right.
in? Like, how did that happen?
I actually was applying everywhere. That it
Okay.
was really hard to say that like, I didn't have shop experience. How could you say like, oh, I wrench by myself?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've been wrenching for all these years, but I didn't have shop experience.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and especially being a woman, that it was even harder
I would
to be
imagine. Yeah.
taken seriously. Yeah, like showing up at these shops and being like, this is what I want to do. And, you know, it almost makes me because I'm a woman, I get questioned a lot harder
Yeah.
and it almost makes me doubt myself. So it's like if I'm by myself, I'm trust my gut, my
Yeah.
instincts, I'm wrenching and things are moving smoothly. And yet when someone else is around, I'm always like questioning, is this the right way?
I think that's
But
natural. It's just
yeah.
it's a natural situation when somebody else is questioning you. You kind of start being like, "Well, I'm pretty sure I'm right," kind of thing, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no. And yeah, just started wrenching and absolutely love it and
So,
trying
so
to learn
who's
as
who's the person that gave you your first shot at a professional wrenching job in a shop? So, who's the person that gave you your first shot? Can you share?
this one's yeah, no, this I say that this one's sad. His name was Detlef, and he was a mechanic from Germany. So he had a
Oh, okay.
KTM dealership in Germany, and he like raced enduro, and he was like this bike master, and he really believed in me, and he was
Nice.
the
Isn't that
first
awesome?
person to say that, like, I want to teach you everything.
Yeah.
Like, it was, yeah, it was beautiful. I'm sad because he sadly passed away
Oh,
a
I'm
couple
sorry to hear
months
that.
ago, so
Yeah.
that was really hard because that was one person that was like, you can do it. And he was
Well,
probably the hardest on me. Like, he would question
yeah.
everything, and he would never say anything. He would just watch me do it wrong so that I could fail, and then you
Yeah.
usually don't make the same mistake twice. But
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm super grateful for that opportunity. Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful that
Yeah.
he believed in me, and now I can say, like, I have all this shop experience, and now I'm kind of like, well, where do I want to work? I get to
Yeah.
kind of choose that now.
Yeah. And I would imagine, like how many years has it been that you've been doing this now?
Not that many actually, probably less than 5.
Okay, so in the last 5 years, I can only imagine that you've had some customer interactions that have been very interesting, right? And without
Hmm.
giving away names or anything like that, like tell us about some of the more interesting customer interactions that you've had. And I can only imagine people will look at you and go like you're my mechanic, right? Like type of thing, right? Because like
Yeah.
it's so rare to see a lady in the shop, right, working on wrenching on sleds. Like I can honestly say over all the years, I don't know that I have ever seen in any of the local dealerships I've been at that there's been a female mechanic in there. And so
It's
you
really
shared with me.
rare.
I'll give everybody full disclosures. Like you've already shared with me a couple of these stories, but I think they're interesting and entertaining, and I think they're a good lesson learned. I think all of us have this
Yeah.
unconscious bias that we have in our heads that
Hmm.
you have to deal with every day. Like it's I mean,
Hmm.
there's jobs that are perceived as very masculine, and there's jobs that are perceived as very feminine. Like I'll just give you a quick example.
Hmm.
Is like when I first started my career in photography, and I got into working at a 1 hour photo center. This was back, probably by the time you were born or
Right.
something like that, right? But it's like it was back in the 90s, right? And it's like
Yeah.
and it was like almost all females that I worked with, like, and I was like one of the only guys in this shop, and it's like, it wasn't
Right.
that big of a deal, but it was one of those things where it's unique when you're like the only person of the opposite gender working in one particular industry. Like you experience things that are unique, and so I'd love to hear a couple of your fun and or funny stories if you have a couple of that. Maybe we can learn from and how we could approach it differently if we were run into that
Right.
situation. So,
Yeah. Well, actually, the shop that I was last working at, it was kind of like you did everything. So, like, I would be at the front desk, I
yeah,
would leave my bench and come up forward. And so, a lot of the times when I would come forward, people just thought like I was the receptionist or something like
yeah,
that, right? But I would get a lot of like, I need to speak to a mechanic. And then I'd be like, right here. And they'd be like, no,
right
no,
here, yeah,
I
right here,
need to speak
right
to a
here.
mechanic. And then I would have to bring my mechanic, oh, like my boss over, and then they
He
would
would,
just listen to me talk, but it would be like me telling you what I could have told you. But when there's a man near me, they listen,
yeah,
which is,
yeah,
but I get a lot, there'd be some older gentlemen. It's usually yeah, you, like you said, it's rare. And so they've never seen it. So
yeah.
they would come in and be like, let me look at your hands. You're not a real mechanic.
Let me
And then
see.
they'd see
Let me
my
see the dirt
fingers.
under your fingernails, right?
Yes. And then they'd look at my hands and they'd be like, oh, yeah, you're a mechanic, right? Because that was like the proof. And then that was, how do your hands look? So,
That's awesome.
no,
So,
it's been
so what
interesting.
was? Go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I got another follow up question.
I
So,
was just going to say, yeah, I actually I did parts. I worked for parts when I was super young. And that was when I saw a lot of that, was when people would say, like, I'm looking for
yeah,
this part. And then they like wouldn't believe me that
yeah,
like this was the price of it. And they'd be like, I need to hear the price from a man.
yeah.
But at that point too, the shop that I was working at was very, very supportive, and they very much had my back. So
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. And then, have you ever had kind of what I would call the opposite experience, where like you walked away just like elated with the interaction that you had with a particular customer? It could be a male customer, a female customer, somebody who you made their day, and they just high fived you to the end of the day, right? Type of thing. Like,
mhm,
tell me about one of those experiences too on the other end of the
right.
spectrum.
And I would actually say that those experiences the majority of my day,
That's awesome.
right? Like
Yeah.
those bad times, I only have a couple people
Yeah.
throughout this wrenching career that have really
It's like
questioned me.
any part of our lives in any part of the world. It's like there's always these ignorant, jerks that, are going to screw something
Hmm.
up type of thing. So, we all
Hmm.
have to deal with them at some point in our lives. So,
No, for the most part, everyone is super kind, genuine, because a lot of the
hmm,
time, if you're coming in to a shop, you yourself don't know
yeah.
and you're willing to learn, right? So you're kind of like, I want to know what's going on with my machine and I'm going to take it to someone who can tell me. And like I said, the shop that I was working at, you kind of did everything. So, like, when you would pick up your machine or drop it off, like I was the one talking to you and talking with you and telling you what I did and what I didn't do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know if I have one experience, but there's most of my days would be actually very rewarding of people
That's
being
awesome.
very grateful for,
That's what keeps you motivated.
maybe fixing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with your concussion that you've had, has it affected your ability to wrench at all? Like, I mean, like memory of some of the processes that you normally would just know how to do that you've had to like start looking back up again or anything like that, or no?
That's really interesting that you asked that just because that's something that I haven't really thought about. But to be honest, yeah, I felt like I was a little slower
Yeah.
when I was really dealing with it all. Is that like it was just taking me a little longer. I was still
Yeah.
doing the job. I was still, everything was right. I was just felt slower
Well, the
in what I
concussion
was
in
doing.
general, like the best thing they tell you to do to treat a concussion is literally just to rest your brain, right? And
Hmm.
whether you're wrenching, mechanicking, whether you're riding ATVs, snowmobiles, or whatever, like all of those things are very mind focus intensive tasks, right? Including wrenching,
Hmm.
right? Like you got to be thoughtful about what's the next step and hey, did I remember to tighten this to the right torque specs? There's
Hmm.
so many pieces of it that to just sit around, I can tell you're a lot like me in the idea that like you can't just sit still. Like there's no such thing as like holding you back and
There's
slowing
no
you down, right?
chill.
I'll give you a short version of a story of mine, right? Where it was like it was back in literally like 2004, it was the beginning of the snowball season for 2004, 2005, and I had a pretty bad accident where I cartwheeled a sled after doing it was like a compression fracture in my back, and so I actually
Oh, wow.
I had two vertebrae in my back that were partially crushed. Was lucky to be able to walk away from it and everything. And like the whole time that I was recovering, I had doctor's orders of like you have to be out for 8 weeks. You can't be doing anything like this. Like I was just itching and chomping at the bit to ride my sled again. Like the second that I could get back on
Hmm.
my sled and was allowed to do so, I did. And I just know that feeling of like physically you're being held back, but like your brain just wants to be out there doing what you love. So.
Yeah, no, there's no if you know me personally, that I'm a very like passionate person.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the word I would use. I'm very passionate about anything that I do.
Yeah.
And so being told to like sit down and not do anything, I'm like my mind
It's
is
like the worst punishment ever.
it's the
I know.
worst punishment
I
ever.
can relate to that. I can relate to that. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have some goals that you have still in the future too, which based on everything you've told me, I'm just going to say it out loud and say like you might have bumped your head a little too hard because what you're about to share next about what your personal goals are for your backcountry, like you told me a little bit about you want to be a freestyle athlete now and start hitting ramps. Like again, you might have bumped your head a little too hard because that doesn't seem like the right thing to do. But tell me a little bit about what your goals are and what your passion is and what you're hoping to accomplish going forward here.
Right. Yeah, with my writing, a handful of years ago is when I was like, I want to hit ramps. I want to do freestyle.
Yeah,
That's what I want to do. And, you can't just say a goal like that and then do it. Like you have
yeah.
to
You got to
build,
work
and
up to it.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to do this safely. Like I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to take on that risk unless I know in my mind that I'm going to execute it perfectly because
yeah,
no one wants to get hurt.
yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I made that goal. I really want to ramp my snowmobile and my race quad. I want to be the first woman out there touring freestyle shows. I'm avidly working towards that goal.
That's
It
amazing.
is, yeah, it is what drives me every day. Even with the backcountry, right? Because a lot of my buddies say like you have to be comfortably hitting 30 feet in the backcountry consistently before they'll even want you to hit a ramp. So
Yeah,
I get to work in levels like that, and not just the physical aspect of doing something like that, but the mental aspect. But I actually think when I think about ramps and freestyle, like it's way more calculated and safe than like when you hit random stuff in
Oh
the
yeah. You
backcountry.
don't know if there's
That's
a
what I
rock or a stump under the snow or whatever, right? Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like when in the backcountry, you're not calculating. You're just being like, oh, that'd be a fun feature to jump off of,
Yeah.
or there's so much unknown where, with freestyle, it's a calculated speed. Like it's the ramp, the angle, the landing, all of that is precision, so that you can just freely float. And I think it's safer, because most people would be like, that is
That's
crazy.
probably what you've told your parents, right? Is that it's safer, mom and dad, right? It's safer.
No, it's calculated risk. Yeah, no, when I'm around it, I'm just putting all
Yeah.
my energy into it. I study other women that have, done freestyle in other realms. Obviously, that's not in the ATV world because it's kind of a dying breed, but
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of female motocross women athletes, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, this is a huge goal, and it's so crazy to say out loud, but it's going to happen. And yeah, I attend as many events as I can and just try to be a part of that atmosphere, that
Yeah.
universe, and
Yep.
learn as much as I can. But yeah, I like, because like I'm very much in visualization, and so like I picture it, I know it's going to happen.
That's
And
awesome.
even when I just visualize it, I like imagine myself crying the first time I hit a ramp. But yeah, it's funny because actually I was, even though I wasn't supposed to be riding, I was actually going to start hitting ramps on my race quad this fall.
Yeah.
And then until my
And then
accident
you got hurt.
happened. And
Yeah.
that's why I kind of looked at it as like, maybe that was a blessing to say that like you weren't ready to hit ramps, because
Yeah.
I had this accident, but I was like, next week I'm going to go start hitting ramps. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can start small, and I have the right
Yep.
type of people. I have a lot of people from around the world
Yeah.
supporting me, encouraging me, helping me. A lot of
Yeah.
these athletes at that level like want you to succeed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, even with anyone else, I would say you just have to reach out and ask. Like, most people are there to help. Most people are kind and
Yep.
want you to
Definitely.
win and
Yeah.
succeed. So it's a little nerve-wracking to maybe reach out to a stranger and say like, what do you do, right? Because that was something that I was doing when I
Yeah.
first thought of this goal. Is I was talking to other freestyle athletes and saying, how did you start? what
Yeah.
what was the first trick you learned? What helped you, what didn't help you? Like, I was picking the mind of other people doing what
Yeah.
I want to do. And that's how I'm like, okay, I have my 5-year plan of, what steps do I need to take to get there. But that's why what Cody McNulty said to me, longevity over progression, really helped, because I was very much like, every year I'm hitting 5 to 10 feet bigger. I'm getting more comfortable, and every year I'm slowly progressing. And then, I was like, I maybe shouldn't be pushing that hard right now, because I do want to ride for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
so I need to come back from this injury first. But
Yeah.
injury in the freestyle world is 100% going to happen. So
There you go. There you
just,
go.
you just got to keep
So
going.
I would imagine through your 31 years that you've been doing all of this, that you've had the opportunity, and you probably are still currently inspiring other women around you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of being a female in this industry? Whether it be as a mechanic, whether it be as a backcountry snowmobiler, ATVer, some of the influence and impact you've been able to have on other female riders around you, and what are you doing to help progress people around you at this point too? Because I know we talked a little bit about that in our pre-show.
hmm No, I love that idea of being able, like, when I first started being active on social media, I mean,
Yeah.
I always have been writing, but it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago that I actually started to be present. And all I wanted to do was share my story and help other women achieve what I'm achieving. And a lot of that comes from talking about your vulnerabilities and your fails and stuff like that. And then people
Yep.
can relate to that, and it's really helpful. But yeah, other women have helped me, and I just want to help other women. I think I can be very relatable in the sense that, like I said, I didn't always love riding, and like I've stood as a kid underneath mountains and been like, I'm not doing this, this is terrifying, I
Yeah.
don't even know why I'm riding, because I was so scared all the time. And so I think there was a couple years that I even quit riding. But I want to be able to pass that confidence along to someone. What riding has done for me, especially now as I'm very much solo in this world, I'm traveling, riding, wrenching, all that stuff on my own. So,
Yeah.
it's been empowering. So my social media and presence, I've heard, is that I don't always show that, I come off very confident, or, I'm full sends and very passionate, but in my real life I'm actually very anxious and, uneasy, and I deal with a lot of mental health issues, and riding is my sanity. And I just think it's beautiful that I get this like alter ego of like, when there's a throttle in my hand, I'm just
You feel
a
like a super. Oh,
badass.
I've
And
said that out loud before too. Where like
yeah,
backcountry snowmobiling is the one place that a middle-aged fat guy can like feel like a superhero. you know,
yeah, but anyone can have
I
that
know, right?
feeling. And that's the feeling that, like, it doesn't have to be extreme. You don't have to be doing all these crazy
Yeah,
tricks
yeah,
to still have that feeling. But, you know, being out there in these places that are so remote and otherwise inaccessible, right? And then climbing that mountain and getting to the top, and how
yeah.
empowering that feeling is, I want to coach and teach other people, women, how to gain that confidence themselves, because I know that what it's done for me and how empowering it is for me. And like, I just would love to keep sharing that. I know that whenever I'm out, I'm always teaching. If you ever see me out, you can pull me aside, you can tell me what you want to learn, and I will teach you in some way, or just reach out and ask, because
Very
there's
cool.
helpful tips that I've learned along the way. And,
Very
because
cool.
back in the day, well, this is how my dad taught me how to ride, is just watch what I do and do it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
There was no like, but then being a woman rider and smaller and stuff like that, like there's
Not
so
the
much
same, is it?
technique that
Yeah,
comes into it. And being like, if your foot's like this, or your hands like this, or these little things, then all of a
yeah,
sudden you can again not fight that machine. You can ride that machine. And then to have control, like you said, of something like 1,000-pound machine, it's empowering. And
yeah,
it's the throttle in your hand, that need for speed is exciting. And, yeah, I just want to keep encouraging women that, like, you can have that basic understanding. You can venture out on your own. You don't need to have, I think for myself, I used to always think that like I needed a man to be able to live this lifestyle, because it is a male dominated industry, right? And to be able to say that I can chase these dreams and I'm
it's
doing
amazing. Yeah,
it by myself as a woman, is empowering. And yeah, I really just want to keep sharing that with other women, and hopefully they can get that same empowerment.
yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, keep up the great work. That's awesome. And I would
Thank you.
imagine you didn't get to where you're at today by yourself. You probably have a few people out there, maybe some sponsors, maybe family members. Who do you want to give some shout outs to or some thank yous to as we wrap up the show tonight? So,
Right. Yeah, no, I'm really grateful for everyone that believes in me and supports me, because like, even in my down days when I'm like, I'm struggling right now physically, and that mental impact on me,
yeah,
my sponsors really believe in me, and that's what keeps me going.
very cool.
Yeah, so one of my main sponsors is the shop that I'm at right now, is Brap Rentals. They just opened up in Sycamoose, and
Nice.
they do repairs, parts, rentals, everything. They're actually one of the only places in the area that refills Avi canisters.
Nice.
So it's really helpful to know. Yeah, and I've been with Climb for probably about 5 years as well. So, it's been an
Nice.
amazing experience, and encouraging to, Climb Women is definitely a family. And so, yeah, they're super encouraging, and it's so great to see all that. And then, yeah, I've been with Mountain Lab. Obviously, you're giving away that first aid kit. I've
Yep.
been with Mountain Lab for like 5 years now. I
Yeah.
absolutely
Great
love working
stuff.
with them.
Great
Love their
equipment. Yeah.
product. Yeah, I give it away. I just gave away that first aid kit, actually,
Oh, did you? Nice.
because yeah, no, and I always give away their toolkits, because obviously as a mechanic,
Yep.
I preach their toolkits.
Yeah, I run
Everyone
their
should have
toolkit in
one.
my tunnel bag as well. So,
No, that's an amazing brand. And then, yeah, this year I'm also working with Freshies Built. So they sell a lot of aftermarket parts out of
yep.
Montana.
Very cool. I actually know them as well too. So it's Kyle, isn't it?
Hmm.
That's the owner of them.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you. Any other final words you want to share tonight before we wrap it up?
Mm, I
Any?
just thank you for this
Yeah.
opportunity. And, the social media side of things can really discourage people,
Yeah.
and just ride for you. Remember
Yeah.
why you're riding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you're capable. The only I always say, like, your sled is capable of doing this. So what the only thing that's holding you back is you and your own mind. So
Yep. Nope.
if you
Absolutely.
can conquer that, you can conquer anything.
So I'm going to throw you what I believe is a fun curveball. Ready? This is
No,
unplanned,
no,
unexpected. But
no.
here's what I would tell you is you before the show were like crazy nervous, like you were sharing with me, right? And
Yes.
I gave you some advice and I told you, hey, within a few minutes things are going to calm down. It's just going to be a conversation. So for anybody who might be thinking about reaching out to me and wanting to be part of the show, just give me a few seconds or a few minutes, if you will, of what was your experience like getting prepared for the show tonight, going into the show tonight, and then at the end here, because I can tell you became very comfortable through the show. You did an amazing job going through it. You might have still been
Thank
nervous through
you.
the whole thing, but you did a great
So
job going through
nervous.
it. But this is not something I normally do. But I think you're a good quote unquote sample of somebody who was very
Mhm.
nervous coming into this, but then came across as very like smooth and confident throughout the whole show. And so, how was your experience being a guest on the Live Large Universe show?
Right. And I think the biggest thing, this kind of relates to just being on social media in general,
Yeah,
is I find being prepared. So like, right, we talk about what we're going to talk about. I write it down. No, I'm
yep,
not reading a script in front of me, but
yep,
having that I prepared in my mind
yeah,
takes some of that anxiety away. It's also, you're very easy to talk to. So you got to remember that we're having conversations here. And actually something that on my way here, because I was driving up with a buddy and he was like, everybody makes mistakes and is nervous, and especially when you're live, like
yeah,
that's what happens, and that's okay. It happens to everybody, and that was really, really helpful. So
yep,
yeah, being prepared, having it written down. When I first started being public on social media, I was very much had scripts behind my camera,
yeah,
because I would just blank when the camera was on
yeah.
because I was so nervous.
Yep.
So yeah, be prepared and then write a script. And the more you do it, the easier it
Yeah.
becomes. So, and
I hope
like you said, vulnerability is what reaches people,
it
being
is.
real and
It,
honest.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's hopefully what we get across in every episode that we do is just it's an authentic conversation about the topics that we talk about, the shows that we do. But I hope what you've also experienced, what you said you have, is that I've put you at ease. Like I've as a
mhm,
host, I can get you through the conversation. I can tee up the next question and kind of keep you focused on
mhm.
what we need to go on. And as long as I know in advance of the goals of what we want to accomplish tonight, I'm going to guide you through the process. And so, for anybody who is thinking about joining me for an episode, don't be afraid. Reach out. I'm actually, I think we're booked through roughly February right now or mid February, but we've got, March, April. We got a bunch of months here still to fill through the rest of the season. So, feel free to reach out and let me know if you guys want to shout. So, cool.
Definitely.
Well, God bless everybody. Live
Yes.
large.
Thank you
And
guys for tuning in. Share
yeah,
it. Win this first aid kit.
exactly, exactly. So, Amber, you hang on for a second. We're going to wrap it up. So, thank you everybody for watching tonight. Have a great night.